Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and I'm here today with Blaine Parker, who many of you probably don't know yet, but will know after today. But you may have heard him because in certain parts of the country, Blaine is the voice. He does the voice work on what is it, Little Caesars, and also for Papa John's, right?
I was a voice for Little Caesars in the Midwest, and for almost 2 years, all over the UK, you could hear me saying, "Better ingredients, better pizza."
That's a good gig if you can get
Yeah.
it. Interesting kind of way into pizza because what we're going to be talking about with Blaine today is his book and his blog called Free the Pizza. And Free the Pizza is it's been around for a few years. The book is just recently out, right? But Free the Pizza you started a few years ago, right?
I started there was a blog on and off for several years, but I didn't really commit to it until about a year and a half ago, which was right before the book came out. And, now it's like it's taken on this life of its own. And wow, I didn't anticipate this happening.
Well, let's tell everybody about what Free the Pizza is all about. What's its mission and its purpose.
The mission, you know, Free the Pizza, I feel like everybody can make pizza if they really want to. Here, by the way, shameless plug. There it is. I don't know
Oh,
who that
beautiful.
guy
I'm
is
glad you had the copy in front of you. Yeah. So, and that's available, by the way, we'll say it right now, but that's available to people via Amazon, right? It's a
Right.
Amazon published book.
Yes, it is on Amazon. It's been an Amazon #1 bestseller. It has won a Living Now Book Award for
Nice.
best specialty cookbook, which shocks the heck out of me. And I think part of the reason for my success is that I don't have any professional training. I kind of muddled through after reading this silly little book called American Pie by this guy named Peter Reinhardt about 20 years ago.
That's a while back. Yeah.
And yeah, I kept making pizza, and my wife, being from Philly, has got serious opinions about pizza. She also lived in New York. And
Well,
when she was
you're from those two
convinced
cities, you have opinions about everything.
but she was convinced from the word go that I was onto something. So, been making pizza ever since.
Well, and just as quick background, so you and your wife are also writers, have been writers for a long time, and writing partners on projects as well, right?
Yeah, all kinds of things. Our current project, unfortunately I can't say a lot about it, but we're developing a food documentary with comedy involved. For one
Cool.
Yeah, well, we hope so. We're, getting this close to shooting something, we hope, and it's going to be on one of the big streaming networks.
Fantastic.
And
Well,
we've written
congratulations.
we've written business books together. She's on her fourth novel. This is actually one of those COVID projects. She wrote an entire trilogy of novels about people locked in during COVID.
Ah,
And they're fantastic. A friend of ours said, "Would you develop this for a TV sitcom?" So she said, "Sure, I'll do a TV sitcom." And she came up with this idea. And of course, nothing happened with it, which is what happens with 99% of all projects in Hollywood. And I said, "Look, you need to write this as a novel, because that way you're going to have a finished whole product." The problem with screenplays is that they are really just blueprints for a house nobody's ever going to build. I might even have a copy of it here somewhere. But
well, that way, if she writes the novel, then some production company can buy the screen rights, and you can get paid twice, and then they can do all the work to get it on the air.
That's the ideal. It almost never happens.
Of course, but it's the dream, right?
Yeah. So she started writing a novel, and I said to her, "You realize this needs to be 3 novels because the third book sells the first one." So she wrote 3 novels, and now she's shopping a vampire comedy novel with an agent.
You're touching in on all the genres now.
Yes.
Well, that's cool. And first of all, what's your wife's name, and what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is, well, I can't tell you about the vampire book, but
no, I mean the one that's already the first one's out already, there, right?
Yeah, Careful-ish. It's the Careful-ish trilogy.
Careful-ish. It's great.
Cool title. 3 of them. I got to tell you, I do think that the second one is the most hilarious thing I've ever read. The first one and the third one are excellent, but I kept reading the second one going, okay, my family is now involved here.
And does she write under the name Honey Parker? Is that her?
Honey Parker. HoneyParkerBooks.com. Thank you for allowing me to shameless plug my spouse.
Well, she's a Philly girl. I have to Yes, Packer, totally. We've suffered with the Phillies and the Eagles for so long that
Oh, the indignity of being an Eagles fan. I feel for you. Let me tell you.
we got so close last year. Who knows? Maybe it'll be this year. But as we learned this week, because this is the week that the Jets suffered the huge, painful experience of having their quarterback, Aaron. Boy, I don't even remember his name now. Now that he's ruptured his Achilles tendon, we're already relegating him to the history bin. But anyway, they lost their quarterback, and they're under the jinx that the Philadelphia city's been under for at least 40 years, ever since the Phillies lost a 10-game lead. Was it a 6-game lead with 10 games left in 1963? That's when, and I was 13 years old, and that's when I got implanted and imprinted with the idea of the Philly jinx. So
you really are a diehard Philadelphia fan across
I'm a sports fan in general, and I root for wherever I live. Right now, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, so we're suffering through a lot of painful sports, angst. But and so since I moved out of Philly, they've actually done better. I think maybe I'm the jinx. I don't know. That's why I don't root out loud for my
the
team.
Reinhardt jinx, the pizza jinx.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get back to pizza, Blaine, because Free the Pizza was well, if I'm hearing you correctly, the whole purpose of the book and the site is to reach out to people who would like to be able to make great pizza at home, but are afraid that they don't have the right tools or the right skills to do it.
Well, yes, in a nutshell, Free the Pizza, a simple system for making great pizza whenever you want with the oven you already have.
Which is really nice.
As I said, this was started as a COVID project, and I just knew too many people who were saying to me during COVID, what pizza oven should I buy? And I say, look, you've got a pizza oven. Just buy yourself a steel, buy a peel. Steels and peels are where it's at, and make pizza. It's a process. You're going to have to figure it out. My brother-in-law had said, I just want to make a pizza. What's a quick recipe I can get on the internet? I said, you can't. You can't just get a quick recipe on the internet. You're going to have to try and fail if you do it that way. At least if you buy American Pie. My book wasn't out yet, but I turned him on to American Pie. So after his failure with, just doing a quickie recipe on the internet, he looked at your book and made pizza. And then I said, this has to happen. I've got to do a book inspired by Peter, but is really just a manual for how to get from zero to pizza. I think your book is fantastic. And the important thing about your book is context. I tried to provide context as well. You need to know why you're doing things, not just how you do them.
Yeah.
And it does help to know some history. The anthropology of pizza is important. And you end up knowing why you're making the kind of pizza you're making.
Well, it's interesting because when I wrote that book, which is now 20 years ago,
Yeah.
There was very little context of pizza. Everyone loved pizza, but there wasn't a lot of pizza literature out there. And like the story that now is a cliche of how the margarita pizza was born in Italy. Very few people knew that back then. Now everybody knows that. Everybody knows everything there is about pizza, because then the internet kind of took it, and blogs and sites and lots of television, competition shows, you name it, Chopped. The pizza it exploded. I'd say about around 2010 or 2012, it kind of tipped over into being big time mainstream. But the thing that you're touching into with your book is that still people love eating it, but many people are intimidated about making it.
Yes. And, the problem with the pizza ovens, at least the kind of ovens that most people are buying, is they're really difficult to use. It helps if you really know how to make pizza before you attack a little oven like that. And I know a lot of people who've got those ovens and they're in the garage because they didn't know anything about pizza before they bought the oven.
Oh. So are you referring to like the rock boxes and the uni ovens, which are so hot right now, or some other? There were a couple that came out.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't want to name anybody, but yeah, I mean, they're fantastic ovens.
Well, they're not sponsors. We can say whatever we want. We've had the author of the Uni Pizza Project book on, and so we've heard a little bit about that phenomenon, because it is a phenomenon, the growth of that brand and those ovens and the numbers.
It's fantastic. I love a good entrepreneurial success story. My wife and I joke that we birth businesses, and you know, I can't point to one that's a raging success except for our ad agency, and even that is, you know, small time. But Uni, somebody has said, "Wow, how will we make a little oven?" And the next thing you know, he's got a little oven that's making Neapolitan pizza.
And it was up against I think it's always good when you have a strong competitor. So my entry into all this was hearing about the Rock Box first. And
Yeah.
that was like a friend of mine had that, and he was in love with his Rock Box. And then a year or two later, I heard about Uni kind of coming in, and then suddenly at the last Pizza Expo, there were Uni brand ambassadors walking the floor everywhere. They even had their own booth, and it kind of went from, like you say, a very entrepreneurial idea to suddenly becoming. It's almost like a behemoth now. It's taking over,
Yeah.
and I would imagine that we'll be seeing some other innovation coming from that company, because may start with the pizza oven, but it could turn into who knows what else, over the next couple of years.
You know, I've got an Uni. I've got another small oven like an Uni. I used to have an Earthstone medium oven,
Hmm.
which weighs half a ton,
Yeah.
and you know, it was $7,000. I'm like, and I didn't just run out and buy it. We were building a house, and we said, wouldn't it be fun to have a pizza oven? It'll help sell the house and it did. I mean, people would walk in there, and the guys would be going, "Wow, a pizza oven," and the women would be going, "I don't like where this house is."
And they say, but we got a pizza oven. Who cares?
Yeah, but there's a pizza oven. And you know, it's a project. I mean, that's a 3-hour endeavor just to heat that oven up with, you know,
Yeah.
hardware. And it was fantastic. I'm glad I did it, but I found I was using my home oven more and more.
And that's interesting, because that's really kind of the key to this whole, free the pizza movement or idea, concept.
It's a movement.
Now
Thank you.
it will be a movement after this show airs. But people realizing that they can make great pizzas in a regular standard home oven. But I want to mention one thing that you called out in one of your blog posts, is how the baking steel was kind of a game-changing tool for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Totally. That was, I mean, I knew about steel. I certainly had heard modernist pizza conversations about it. And, you know, Andres Logsdon, you know, thank God for him.
Yeah.
You know, bakingsteel.com. But yeah, during COVID, I bought a steel. And, you know, the first time I pulled a pizza out of a home oven off of steel and fed it to my Philly wife, she went, "Oh my, this is this is a game changer." I mean, even
Now I
she
know why I married you.
well, you know, and Andres tells the story about you know, the first time he baked a pizza on steel, and all of a sudden it was like being back in Figs in Charlestown in Boston.
Yeah,
And
great restaurant.
yeah, he was a rock star chef learning how to make pizza and running the pizza program for Todd English. And now he's got this, you know, just all steel all the time. His pizzas look fantastic.
We did an interview with Andres, oh god, about 5 years ago, when he was sort of just bringing the steel out, and it was basically a side hack for him. He was working, I think, with his father in a steel, what do you call it?
Yeah, he's got a steel fabrication business.
Fabrication company. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. But his background, his love, his passion was food and cooking, and he had worked with great chef like Todd English. And so he put those two things together and said, "What if?" and came up with something. You had the resources right there to create something, and lo and behold, it worked. Now he's got a full-time, baking steel business going. That, again, another movement, and a game-changing one. It's funny how certain things come along, an idea can generate. We've had Mike from Mike's Hot Honey, on Pizza Quest. Same thing. He was making pizzas with Paulie G, brought in some of his hot honey, and Paulie loved it. They introduced it on pizzas. Now, I can't think of a pizzeria around the country that's not using hot honey, and Mike's Hot Honey has become a global brand. And all this is just sort of happening, on the edges of the pizza movement as well. Pizza is sort of one of the lenses through which the culinary innovation is happening. So it's kind of cool that so you found the steel. And did you, prior to that, had you been using a stone and finding that the stone wasn't giving you as good of a product?
Yeah, I had found high-end stone that's made out of the material they make the decks out of in those big deck ovens, which really was an improvement. But I was also making pizza on cast iron, which was at least as good, if not better than steel, or excuse me, better than stone. And you know, and it was a good stone. I 10-minute bake to 11-minute baking, you're getting a really pro product. But when I started doing steel, it just changed everything. Sometimes I've got to bake down to 4 minutes. It's crazy.
And that's amazing. At what temperature?
Excuse me. I run my oven at 550, and then I bake the pizzas with the broiler.
So, okay, so let's talk about that process a little bit. So most home ovens aren't going to get any higher than 550. My home oven that I inherited at my last house was 500. It was max, no convection. So I couldn't get any higher than 500, but yet could still make great pizzas. It's hot enough because I think not everybody realizes it, especially those who are obsessed with cooking with wood at 700, 800, 900 degrees, that most pizzerias for our lifetimes have been baking at about 550, 600 degrees, right?
That's one of the things I find people really don't understand. They think they need a 900-degree oven. And yeah, most of the pizza that you and I grew up on, in fact, I can't think of any pizza that was probably baked at any temperature higher than 600 degrees.
Right.
You know, I never had a Neapolitan pizza until I was probably in my 30s.
Most folks in the States have not, and if they went over to Naples and had one over there and then came back as, believers, that's how that all happened. But we didn't know that style. We grew up with what we now think of as, say, New York or Neapolitan-ish style pizzas from New York and New Haven. And it was different. It's a different kind of pizza than what was being produced in Naples.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing about New York pizza, and I think one of the big unsung heroes is Frank Mastro. You're familiar with his story, I'm sure.
No, I'm not sure if I am.
Frank Mastro, he was an Italian immigrant who was dealing in restaurant supplies, restaurant equipment in New York. And he thought, I really would love to come up with a business model that Italian immigrant families can use to make their way in the New World. And so he started experimenting with the portable ovens, which, the deck ovens, unlike the giant coal-fired room-size ovens that Lombardi's and places like that were using. And he started experimenting with those ovens. He started experimenting with a higher hydration pizza dough that would bake longer at a lower temperature and give you a pizza that was more user-friendly. It could be reheated. It could be put in a box and taken somewhere. If you take a Neapolitan pizza and you try to deliver it, it's not going to be a very good pizza at the other end. And
it was probably made with a high protein flour as opposed to a soft Italian flour.
Yeah. I guess, the high gluten flours are really big in the pizzerias, the New York style pizzerias. I actually prefer bread flour.
Me too. Yeah.
I think it tastes better. I occasionally experiment with high gluten flour again, just to see if I'm missing something.
Well, I think for certain types of pizzas, it's a great flour, and it is sort of the foundation of the New York style pizza, especially the ones that you see them spinning, because that extra gluten gives them that extensibility and elasticity.
I can only imagine what the dough recipe looks like for those guys who spin pizza in competition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be like leather.
Well, for the competition ones, those are doughs that wouldn't make their own pizzas on either.
I know. I just think it's really funny because you can't just take the pizza the pizza dough that you're going to use at home and do that with it. You're going to put your fist through it pretty quickly.
Right.
But, people always say when I'm making pizza, hey, can you spin it? So I've learned to spin it enough.
Yeah.
I can actually make up to 14-inch pizzas spinning it. And it's really cool. And the pizzas are nice and round, but it covers everything in the kitchen with flour. So it's just like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'd rather not.
Right. It's good for showmanship and to impress your relatives. But
I've got a question for you. Why is it that high gluten flour tastes different than bread flour? What is it that makes the bread flour taste better?
Well, from the way I understand it, of course, it's the protein. It's a higher protein amount. Typically, anything called high gluten flour, like All Trumps is the famous General
Right.
Mills version that many pizzerias use. They so it's very often it's bleached, although you can now get an unbleached version. Unbleached always is going to taste better than bleached because the beta carotene pigments have flavor and aroma. But it's mostly the protein. It's chewier, it's tougher, it's harder, it absorbs more water, so you do need to hydrate it a little bit more. But I think the bread flour, well, if we think about flour as starch and proteins primarily, starch is naturally sweet. And so the more starch there is, the more potential for sweetness in the dough. And the
No.
higher the protein, the more chew and,
Uh,
functionality that you'll get. So all-purpose flour has less gluten than bread flour. Bread flour has less gluten than high gluten flour. So all of these things have trade-offs in terms of flavor. So if you want the most flavorful, and I think this is one of the reasons why the Italian 00 flours are so delicious and popular right now, is because they are a lower protein. Typically, the ones that come over from Italy, lower protein, higher starch, and that starch translates into a very nice sweet aftertaste, when after fermentation. So everything this we've talked about in probably in your book and in mine, it's all about the balancing act between time, temperature, ingredients, and functionality. And lower protein flour has more sweetness inherent. Now you can add sugar, and that's why a lot of the high gluten floured pizza doughs have oil and sugar added. The oil helps to tenderize it. The sugar helps to sweeten it up and give some flavor. But anyone who's made wine knows that adding sugar to wine can make it sweeter, but doesn't make it better wine.
no.
So those are it's all about the balancing act.
It was specifically, I was wondering why it was the high gluten flours tasted a little more almost chemical, and it must be the protein.
Well, there's also uh, up until recently, the high gluten flours were kind of the last holdouts for what's the word, bromate, adding potassium bromate. And
Yeah.
potassium bromate is an additive that helps with oven oxidation. It causes the pizza doughs to spring more
Right.
and perform in the oven better. Uh, the mills have learned that they could substitute in a more natural sense without the negative connotations of what bromate does, which is, there's some studies that indicate that there could be links to cancer and things like that. Not
I know
totally.
it's not legal in Europe. You can't use bromated flours, and
And even if it's not true, once the word and perception got out there, it became
yeah.
incumbent for the bakeries, the mills, to stop using bromate. So they started first with the bread flours and the all-purpose flours, and even All Trumps for a while, and I don't know if they still do this, came out in two versions: the bromated version and the unbromated version. Diehard New York slice pizza guys still insist that the bromate is essential, to the classic New York pizza. I don't know how much of that is nostalgia and how much of it you could say, is really provable. But I think that may be the chemical thing that you're tasting, although there shouldn't be. It's such a trace amount that,
I
but
was
it's
using King Arthur high gluten, which is the consumer version of Sir Lancelot,
Lancelot. Yeah,
and never bromated, according to
that's right.
the King Arthur website. They do not.
According to the bag. Yeah. But it's true. I mean, that's why a lot of people, have loved and adopted King Arthur as a brand of choice.
Oh, it's
Um,
totally my go-to flour. King Arthur all the time. I love Bob's Red Mill. Um, I've used Central Milling.
yeah.
I'm having an easier time finding Central Milling products now that I'm not in Utah.
Oh, that's interesting because that's where it's milled. That's right, in Utah.
Yeah, I've actually
Where are
driven
you?
past
For
that
the
mill.
listeners, they don't know where you are. Where are you based now?
Right now we're based in Mississippi.
It's okay.
We were based in Utah. We were in Park City, Utah. And I actually like to say that, Bay St. Louis is a little bit like Park City was about 40 years ago.
Ah,
Back then, Park City was just a cow town that happened to have a ski resort at one end of it. And, this is being here. It's a little bit like yesterday. Little mellow town that where everybody gets along for the most part.
so Bay
Um,
St. Louis is kind of like a getaway town for people from New Orleans and Louisiana. It's close to the border, right?
And yes, and a lot of people who during COVID said, I think I'd like to live there. And in fact, the house we're in, I can't tell you how many times I have been to a party and I have met somebody who said, "Oh, that house, I grew up in that house."
Wow. Bay
It's,
St. Louis. So,
yeah,
so what brought you just to Bay St. Louis into Mississippi and moving from Utah, which many people, view as an idyllic place to live?
it is an idyllic place to live. I got to say, Utah was fantastic, and people who've never been really need to go because it is one of the spectacular American states.
Yeah.
And you can get a cocktail if that matters to you. When we left, we were living in Los Angeles and we told people we're moving to Utah and they would ask us, "Are you Mormon?" I said, "You've seen me drink, right?"
Right. Flu number one.
But I did a Google search one day. I was looking for affordable waterfront real estate. And on a list of 10 possibilities, this was the only place I would consider coming because we got a lot of friends who were from the Mississippi and Louisiana area. I was like, I'm not going to the Midwest, not interested in the Great Lakes, not interested in the Pacific Northwest. I'm from New England. I don't need that. But let's try this Mississippi thing. And we got here. We came down for a week, got a VRBO, and we met people immediately. And a week later, they threw us a going away party. So we thought, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess being writers, you can live wherever you want to live. You're not bound by a particular locale, right?
Not at all. Well, especially now that we're writing for ourselves, Honey and I are both really focusing on writing books instead of running the ad agency. We've been shedding clients, which feels fantastic. But and I hope none of my clients are listening. But
so you've been basically your day job, so to speak, has been having your own ad agency in addition to writing for and doing voiceover work and things like that in the
the voiceover work and the advertising kind of go hand in hand. I worked in radio for a long time. And you've probably heard me sell you all kinds of things on TV and radio. For a couple of years, I was the national.
Oh, you're the guy.
Yeah, I'm the. You're the guy. Sidebar. We were in London visiting with my wife's cousin, and my wife turns to her cousin and says, "By the way, Blaine is the voice of Papa John's Pizza here." She says, "What?" And I said, "Better ingredients, better pizza." And she goes, "Oh
my God, you're the guy.
You're sitting at my dinner table." Yeah. But, we ran this ad agency from the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere for several years. And we had clients in the Philippines. We had clients in Southern California. We had clients in Calgary, New Hampshire. It was fantastic. And just so much fun. And we started it in a recession, of course, because that's when great ad agencies start.
Oh, that's good.
But, that house also had a pizza oven. And, I kind of got this reputation. My wife and I had a podcast for a while called Couple Co, Working with Your Spouse for Fun and Profit, which we ran from that mountaintop. And we literally got into an RV and drove around the country, kind of like Charles Kuralt, interviewing couples in business together. But at one point, we interviewed this Park City couple who were starting a nose-to-tail butcher shop called Chop Shop Park City, which, by the way, is fantastic. And they have a pizza oven. And we were talking about good pizza in Park City. And this chef says, "Well, I've heard there's this guy, but you kind of have to know him and get an invitation." I said, "Yeah, we know about that guy." That's us.
Yeah. So that's what you were like, throwing little pizza parties and things?
Yeah, pizza parties and, running advertising for people.
So that's interesting because so you were an early podcast, adopter, I guess.
Not early enough, I don't think. I think that the bandwagon had gotten rolling when we finally jumped on it. I'd had this idea for years. And it's a lesson when you have that idea and you're convinced that it's something to do, jump on it because somebody else will get there. But yeah, it ended up being a very crowded podcast field. You can still find the podcast. There are, I think, well over 100 podcasts, mainly 2-part interviews. And we've interviewed people from all over the country, Mexico. It was great fun. And there are a lot of people who cry. and for the right reason. People just spilling their guts at how much they love this person and love working with them, being able to go to bed at night with them and everything. So yeah, it was dynamite.
So it's kind of like a love letter podcast in a way.
Totally. A love letter
Any,
to being in business with your
any,
spouse, of course.
any war stories or disaster stories that people would share as well? Like it didn't work and it blew up our whole marriage and
Oh yeah, they are in there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but we did have an episode that reflects, I think, how a lot of couples feel about this idea of working with your partner. We were driving through North Carolina in the RV. Honey was at the wheel, and she was in the fast lane, or excuse me, had changed from the number 2 lane to the number 3 lane, or is that number 1 lane, number 2 lane to the number 1 lane, the fast lane, and did it a little too close to the car behind her. So the next thing we know, so flashing lights, we pull over, and Trooper Pruitt comes up to the window and starts asking us, "Hey, what's going on? You're kind of far from home, aren't you?" And not missing a beat, Honey whips out the business card, hands it across me to Trooper Pruitt, and he takes it and he looks at it and he's silent for about 30 seconds, and he goes, "We'd kill each other." And we had a great conversation with Trooper Pruitt, and I think
should have had the tape recorder going for that one.
I wish, if only, because sometimes we had a camera in that RV, and you'd be amazed. And so we almost hit a pronghorn antelope on I-80 in Wyoming, and we both thought we had gone. Then we watched the video, and it looked like this. Yes.
Oh, you mean in your own mind, it was more exaggerated?
Yeah. So yeah, if we'd only had the camera going when that conversation was happening, because it was terrific.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are a lot more war stories with us than I think there are with the people who were in business together.
Well, I think when we started on this little tangent, we started by talking about the baking steel, and some of the things that you've learned and game changers for the home cook. So I'm guessing that one suggestion you would make to people is get a baking steel. Any tricks about using the steel, because they get hotter than a baking stone. So how do you use them in a way that you don't burn the underside of your pizza?
Sometimes the first pizza does burn. I find that sometimes I do this in a lot of ovens that I've never used before. So sometimes I'm a little shocked at how hot.
Every oven's different. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've used everything from like the cheapest General Electric to the most expensive Wolf, and all over the map. I have found, for the most part, as long as you keep an eye on it, and of course I use the broiler too, which raises the bar on.
That's the other thing I wanted to get back to, is talk about how you use the broiler. Yeah.
The potential for disaster is high if you're not paying attention. And
so you bake the pizza the entire time under the broiler, or do you switch to the broiler like at partway through?
There are all different strategies with this. I have tried several. The one that I have found works best for me is when the oven is ready, right before I put in the pizza, I turn the broiler on, knowing that the thermostat is going to prevent that broiler from going on before the oven dips below probably 525 degrees. So it's you kind of got to be on your toes, and there's a learning curve. You will start to figure out when your own broiler goes on. Excuse me. But the process for me is I put in the steel, I heat the steel. Once the oven gets to temperature, I heat the steel for an hour.
Yeah.
And in the oven I'm using presently, I get the oven to 550. At the end of an hour, the steel is measuring 620 degrees. 619, actually. For some reason, it doesn't seem to want to go over 619. But launch the pizza, turn the broiler on, and usually these days, depending on how heavy the topping load, I have got a pizza in anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes. And turn on the oven light, watch the pizza. It does help.
Yeah. So basically, the steel is hot enough so that the crust starts baking underneath right away. But while the broiler's slowly coming on, then you finish off the top, and again, it's a kind of this balancing act, and every oven's got to perform differently. How
Oh,
about shelf? Do you put it in the middle shelf, on the bottom shelf, top shelf?
I'm putting the rack 6 to 8 inches below the broiler.
You're pretty high
My
up.
oven is 6 inches. And by the way, going back to something you said about the heat of the steel, especially for beginning pizza makers, there are going to be arcane terms like oven spring. And, I did not really pay much attention to the idea of oven spring until I started making pizzas on steel. And I'm going, what is going on here? It's oven spring. If you get that hot steel, that pizza springs, and you get something you can't get using a cheap stone in a 425-degree oven. Often you can't get it in a portable pizza oven because you can't figure out how to get it hot enough. It depends on the oven.
Yeah.
But yeah, it changes everything. As far as the broiler goes, you can actually sometimes hear the broiler click in. You'll hear the relay click, and the broiler will go on. And especially then, take a peek through the window or open the door if you have to. But rotating the pizza halfway through the bake and doing it 180 degrees and making sure that you get it as even as possible, the brown around that cornicione.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, one of the other things that you just recently done on your site, you just launched the Prousti pizza sort of arc, and which I had a chance to play with you, and participate in. Can you talk a little bit about that? And before you do, just to let our viewers and listeners know that that all the things we're talking about today are all kind of in various posts on Free the Pizza on your website. So where they should go to freethepizza.com. Is that the way to get to it?
Go to freethepizza.com, and that is where you can find the blog. It's where you can find various tips about pizza. It's where you can find my 50,000 word review of Modernist Pizza,
which I see you got a set of them behind you there.
Yeah, next to American Pie, The Bread Baker's Apprentice.
Love your collection. Yeah, for those who are just listening, we're also on on Zoom, and we're seeing your whole pizza library over your shoulder. I love it.
I think I've got about 20 hard copies of books, and then I've got another probably a couple dozen in Kindle. You can't read too many pizza books.
Right.
But yeah, the risk of sounding like a crazed fanboy, I still point people back to American Pizza as the place to start.
Well, thank you for that. It's my first pizza book. I've done two since, but it's still selling after 20 years. People are still buying it, which is great.
Pan pizza, I think, is fantastic because I never would have made pan pizza had it not been for that. And Detroit pizza, a whole other animal. It's a huge crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
And I find that you can make one pizza. People will have a tiny little square and they'll go, man, I'm full. That was fantastic. But anyway, going back to Prousti pizza,
Prousti pizza, give us the context of this.
I had started by calling this Proust's pizza. There is a literary metaphor called Proust's Madeleine. Marcel Proust wrote this 1.5 million word novel called Remembrance of Things Past, or In Search of Lost Time, depending upon which title you know it as.
Yeah.
And
it's a book that everybody knows about, but hardly anyone's ever read.
I feel so pretentious talking about Proust. I have read the beginning of this book, and it's enough to make me go, I don't think I ever need to read this book.
I know. I can't get through it, but we love to read about the Madeleine, but I go, why would I want to spend the next 2 months, 3 months, reading 1,500 pages?
Yeah, I feel like I'm much more likely to quote a Monty Python joke about Proust than I am to quote Proust himself.
Yeah, exactly.
But the story goes, the narrator is an adult, and he's taken a Madeleine, which is that little French sponge cake that looks like a seashell, and he dips it in some tea and takes a bite, and suddenly is whisked back to his childhood home and his invalid aunt, feeding him a bite of Madeleine that's been dipped in tea. And he's never recalled this ever. And it is now, the Proust Madeleine is a metaphor for a food that takes you back to another time. And I thought, well, what if Proust had been eating pizza?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, everybody's got to have a pizza memory like this, mustn't they? And because, for me, if I eat a really oregano forward New York style pizza, which I am making a lot of right now. Instantly, I am carried back to Caruso's Pizza Counter in Grand Central Station. It's
Exactly.
10:30 at night. I am rushing to get the last train, and I'm with a bunch of friends, but we will always stop, no matter how late we are, at Caruso's and buy a slice and a big beer and run to that train. Caruso's is long gone, but that pizza still is
Right.
like lodged in my memory.
Implanted
You
there. Yeah.
actually had a quote that I love, if I may go so far, be so bold as to do this. Those taste memories from Paganos and Mamas are imprinted onto my soul.
Yeah.
And by the way, everybody, you should go to freethepizza.com, go to the blog, read the Proust Madeline story, because Peter's stuff is fantastic. And also, the answers were so long and so big that I couldn't really fit them all into the blog post. So everything's there. But I got Peter, and I said, Peter, I'm doing this.
How many? Yeah. So you put the word out that you were looking for these memory pieces. How many have you gotten so far? I mean, I know I was excited about it, so I did one right away.
You
And
did. I'm
and
right on top of that. I was shocked.
and you launched and you led the series with that one, which I really appreciate.
Yeah,
But
you
how
took
many others
Proust
have you
Madeline.
heard?
You took Proust Madeline and immediately renamed it Pizza Prousti, which I
Pizza
stole.
Prousti, yeah. I don't know. It just came out that way. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like Tutti Frutti. There's something kind of fun and cute about it.
People love that.
But
Yeah.
I've got an answer in this blog post from you. I got Andrus Logsden, who I knew was going to conjure up images of the first pizza he baked at home on steel. I got there's a chef I know in Miami Beach. Chef Tuan Tron has a YouTube channel called Cooking with Chef Tuan, and he does pizza pop-ups, and his pizzas look fantastic. And I said, would you mind writing a Pizza Prousti? He has this memory of being a little Vietnamese kid in Pensacola, 6 years old. He's never had pizza because, as a Vietnamese family, they didn't eat
Yeah.
pizza.
Yeah.
And he's doing a field trip, and this single file line of 6-year-olds walking from school to the Domino's down the street, and his first pizza, and it just is a mind bender for him. And he says, now, whenever I go into a Domino's or I smell a Domino's pizza, this suddenly is the memory that I have got. It has that reaction.
Interesting.
Stephanie Swan from
Oh,
Modern.
Stephanie. We love Stephanie.
Stephanie's fantastic, and she immediately agreed. And I was like, "This is fantastic!" And people who I know have got too much going on are happy to write these things. She wrote about a Hoboken pizzeria that was her late night go-to joint after, being out at the clubs or being to parties or whatever, and it was like the balm for her soul.
There you go. Everybody's got a place. That's the point here. Everyone's got a place like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's such a cool idea for a collection of memory pieces I mean, now you got a great title, Pizza Prousti. You got to be able to sell this as a book.
I've thought about that, and it could take on various different complexions. I was thinking it could be like Chicken Soup for the Soul, except
yeah.
pizza version. There was no shortage of New Jersey pizzas here. Kevin Godby, who is a blogger that I know, has My Life as Pizza.com. He wrote, again, something that relates to his youth and school and a pizza making family. And it's one of the things I've realized is that pizza is very much tied up in family, and it's very much tied up in friends. There are always other people involved.
Yeah.
Rarely does anybody have a pizza memory where they're sitting alone in a room with a pizza. And it's just a beautiful thing. And, I would love to be able to make a book happen. I'm not sure how to do it, but, life is nothing but oncoming book projects.
Well, as you start to collect these Pizza Prousti food memory pieces from people, you'll see if you've got enough to do a book. But if not, you've got it on the site. So again, for those who are listening, for watching, check out freethepizza.com. It's Blaine Parker's website, journal, his own passion for pizza, but also the book Free the Pizza. What's the full title, the subtitle? I always find the subtitles more descriptive than the title.
How to make great pizza whenever you want with the oven you already have.
There you go. So that really says it all.
there was I was in New Jersey making pizza for some Jersey people who have a very high bar for pizza, and they're like, "Oh, how are you doing this?" And this guy is reading the title, and he just says, "Wow, yeah."
It's funny, it's like seems like we're how there's all these waves in the pizza world. Detroit had its moment a few years ago, and and there's a rumble, but New Jersey right now seems to be trending, if that's the right way
Yes.
to say it. Jersey pizza is back. It's never been gone, but it's back and bigger than ever. And I guess everyone from Jersey is just coming out of whatever
Yeah.
the complex that they have of living in the shadow of New York and saying, no, it's really about us. It's not about New York.
It's a big pizza with a bad attitude.
There you go. We have a great pizzeria here in Charlotte called Gino D's. We've had Gino and his daughter Gina on the show, and his place called Gino D's Jersey style pizza. And I said, well, what makes it Jersey pizza? And he goes, it's because I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah,
I said, and it's made with love. That's the defining for him. That was the defining quality of Jersey.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you'd read your Pizza Prousti, but I think you just encapsulated it right there. I mean, pizza is also love, and you make it for people. It's not just a business decision, especially when you're doing it at home.
And as those of us who were lucky enough to grow up in cities that had really good restaurants of pizza style restaurants and Italian restaurants, we have those kind of memories. In the Midwest and other parts of the country, pizza came a little bit later into the picture. But even for many people, their first pizza memory might be during college or or even after college. It could have been any time in their life because pizza has become the dominant food of America. So in my Pizza Prousti piece, I just refer back to the two I would say signature pizzerias in my childhood. And because I have my story with pizza goes back, to those childhood memories. And
Mamas and Paganos.
Mamas and Paganos.
I want to go to both of them, and they don't exist anymore.
So I don't want to. I'm not going to say any more about it because I want people to go to the site, read the story. My piece is only about 600 words or 700. It's not a long. These are all vignettes more than memoirs, and I've read mine and a few of the others that have come in since, and it's great reading. And I think hopefully some of you who are listening will contact Blaine and contribute one of your own. Would that be is there a way for them to reach you through the site?
If anybody wants to reach out to me through freethepizza.com, hey, and if you've got a Pizza Prousti pizza memory, feel free to send that too. Just make sure you tell me what the current pizza is that takes you back to the pizza from back in the day.
Yeah.
Excuse me on that. But if you go to freethepizza.com, and I think it's /Pizza Prousti, I'd have to check that, or it's Proust's Pizza. If I had been smart before this conversation, I would have bought a domain name just to link to this. Now I feel ridiculous. But here's what I will do. I will actually, on the homepage of Free the Pizza, I will see if I can put a link directly to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be good. There isn't one on the homepage that takes you there?
If you go to freethepizza.com, it's in the nav menu. It might be under a drop down on the right-hand side. Here, let's look at it and find out what exactly I did. Someone obviously did not do their homework for this. freethepizza.com. And I guess I hid it in navigation. Well, let's go unhide it.
Well, by the time this episode airs, because we're talking today, we're still in early September. It'll probably not air until October sometime. By then, I imagine the navigation will be even easier. But if you do get a chance, read some of the other posts that people have written, the Proustis, and then write one of your own and start communicating with Blaine. Or
do that. I seriously, I am happy to field any and all pizza questions and pizza memories, because as much as I have other things I have to work on, this is a labor of love, and it's always worth it.
And that's it. And
by the way, it's possible in October, fingers crossed, there's so much getting in the way, but there's a new book coming called Free the Pizza 2, Escape from New York. How to make legit New York pizza in your home oven. And because the only reason being that whenever I post New York pizza on social media, people lose their minds and want the recipe. And it's like there's this mythical creature status that New York pizza has got. So I figured this is a public service.
Well, I think you have opened a Pandora's box of opportunity for yourself through Free the Pizza and Pizza Prousti and the books that you're doing. So we wish you the best of success, and listeners, viewers, check it out, and hopefully Blaine will see you. Maybe you should come to the Pizza Expo in the spring. You're halfway there. You're halfway to it from where I am. But if you get a chance, it might be fun to hook up, in person there and have you go around and collect some more stories and do some interviews of your own.
I've wanted to go for years, and something has always gotten in the way. And now I guess I'm just going to have to say, look, honey, Peter said I have to come.
Yeah, get in your RV and make some podcasts on the way out there. Going to Expo together. Good luck to both of you and Honey in her books. Again, Honey Parker's book. Let's give her shout out her title again for people who want to check it out.
HoneyParkerBooks.com.
And what's the first title in the series?
The Careful-ish trilogy. There's Careful-ish, Daughter of Careful-ish, and Bride of Careful-ish.
Love it. Well, congratulations to both of you, and thanks so much for being with us today, telling us all about Free the Pizza, and continue to spread the word, and thanks for helping people make pizzas in their home that perhaps can create food memories and pizza memories for their own families.
Yeah, Peter, thank you for having me on. This is fantastic. You have been one of my pizza heroes, and
thanks.
To be sitting here talking to you like this is just like, woo!
Well, I love looking over your shoulder, seeing all your pizza books, and seeing a couple of mine right there on the shelf with everybody else's. Thank you for your support, and thank you for the ongoing shout outs that you've given me through your site. We're all in this together. We always say that the pizza freaks of the world are kind of like a tribe, and
we are all in this together. I'm not sure it's a good thing. I've gained 20 pounds.
Well, that's one of the. We'll also have a support group for taking that weight off. Blaine Parker, thank you so much. We'll see you maybe at Expo, maybe sometime before, and hopefully we'll see and connect with all of you who are watching and listening to Pizza Quest on the next episode. Thanks.